I've often been asked about this red dress image I took of the fabulous Jessica Benson some 6 years ago now. So in the next few minutes I'm going to reveal the secrets of this amazing red dress and how I created this image. For those of you that don't know me, I am Stephen Hayward, and around 7 years ago I made the transition from 35mm film with my old Minolta X700 to shooting digital. At that time I was on an Olympus E3. I must admit, I was so disappointed in the results. The raw files came out flat and lifeless, nothing like the 35mm film that I'd done. And then I discovered it was supposed to be like this, and that there were things called Adobe Camera Raw and Photoshop, and a new world of digital art opened for me. For a while, I used these digital tools to recreate the look of the images that I was getting with my old 35mm days, barely using any of the capability of Photoshop. Then I thought it would be great to both set myself a digital art challenge whilst learning Photoshop, and that is how the Red Dress project came about. I came up with the concept of using primary colours, blue for the sky, green and yellow for the fields, and a bit of the Gone with the Wind style big red dress on steroids. I found my location, I found a fabulous model, and secured a photographic assistant, my son. And all I had to do now was wait for the crops to grow and for the perfect weather. And when that day came, I took my shot, and this was what it looked like when it came out of the raw. So pretty uninspiring, but I kind of got used to raw by now, that sort of flat, lifeless look. And I know I needed to change it. So for a start, there were a few things I wanted to do. I needed to raise Jessica up, hence the platform that she's on. I wanted to get some of her body above the horizon so that we made that bridge from the green to the blue, and that seemed to work okay. And equally I wanted to raise her up because I wanted some room below the waistline for a huge red dress to flow and lots of material. So the final image, I think you agree, looks quite nothing like this. But for me, the first thing that I needed to do was to concentrate on that big red dress. So this was the image we were starting with, and you can see here you've got Michael, my son, as the photographic assistant here, who held the material very patiently at many different stages as we went round, and that's what the red dress is made up of, this great big roll of red material. And one of the first things I had to do was to start thinking about shaping and contouring, getting the material and pulling it together. So in the first instance, I took many images of the material as we flowed from one side to the next, building bit by bit a flow of material all around Jessica. Once we had actually built the material, the next step, moving on from there, was to start to think about taking those elements and shaping and contouring them. So that's where we got with the shaping and contouring, and a lot of it's just highlighting areas, pulling stuff up like this, adding shadows, pulling those in like so, and then shadows for what's going to be effectively the ends of the material. But to be able to do this, what I did first was that I created a template, and this template was just a sketch of how I wanted the dress to flow, and the flow of the dress then guided me in how I was going to effectively dodge and burn and liquefy the dress as we were going on. So once I got the dodging and burning done, the liquefying done the way I wanted it, as you can see from the template, I got some excess dress that I needed to get rid of. So my next and final step was really just cutting away parts of the dress which I no longer required. And as you can see here, I was then left with the flow of a dress cut away against a background, which I could then take through to my next file. My next and final file was the one of compositing. Before I went much further with the compositing, I was conscious of the fact that the background that I had was, by the nature of it, going to be, like a lot of things in Photoshop, raw files, a little bit sort of dull and lifeless. So I took it into Adobe Camera Raw, and within Adobe Camera Raw I basically pumped up the contrast, popped the colours a little bit, and really positioned where the backdrop where I wanted it to be on the picture to start my composition. from that point forward, I took a picture of Jessica, which I absolutely love the pose of. But there were a few things which I wanted to improve. So, as I say, the background needed to change to one which I've edited and moved on a bit. Obviously, I need to add the dress. And what I wanted to do is do things like the arm. I wanted to raise the arm above the horizon and have some cloth flowing out from her arm there. So, bit by bit, I thought, well, let's start with the basic model sort of shape as Jessica's got here in this fantastic pose, and there was a little bit of nip and tuck just took place in and around the waistline there, and I was to use this shape, that model that Jessica made, to composite in the rest of the picture. So one of the first things I was to do then in the final edit was first of all pull the background in. Once I got the background in, I could then start to take that upper body of Jessica into the picture which I copied from the level below, and I did some curves and upper body sharpening, adding a few shadows and highlights and a bit of vibrance on the top as well, just to get the top looking really the way I wanted it and to match the colour red which is seen in the dress. I then wanted to add on a piece of cloth which would flow in the wind, which I shaped back on, and as I mentioned before, the arm was cutting down below the horizon, so I cut that out, made it a little bit more horizontal and pulled it back up so the arm met from the body through to the flow in pretty much a horizontal fashion, matching with the horizon itself. So from the strength of that, what I got was the body and the flow of the material in. And then from what the previous edit had done is I pulled the dress into the image, and then what I did was I pulled the belt to make it complete. So here all of a sudden we've got that big flowing red dress. The dress itself was kind of a little bit too bright for me and catching the eye a little bit, so what I did is I just darkened that down a little with a curves layer, and I just pulled the red channel down, no more than that. I could have left the image at this point and been quite happy with it, but I wanted to create something of a painterly effect, so I did a little bit of colour grading on it. And the colour grading, I tried a few fill colours on the image. The one I ended up with was blue, as you can see here, at quite a low opacity, and that really starts to pull that element of the painterly effect in. In addition, what I did was I added a bit of pop and contrast, again here using a curves layer, and then I did the colour grading, again using a curves layer, just to try and get the colours I was after out of the image. I did try black and white version, didn't work for me, it was all about the primary colours, and I tried a selenium overlay, again using, in this case, it was a colour balance, but that didn't work for me, so I left it as it was. Then it was just all about finishing the images. So I added a vignette, I added some noise, and as you can see here, I think once everything was set into context, I wanted to take just a trim more liquefy from the waist of the model, so I just added a bit of a trim more liquefy on there, but before I did that, what I did was I noticed to make the model sit in the background, I had to go back to the background layer and add a shadow of where I felt the shadows would be. And you can see from the mask which I put against here, that's kind of where I felt the shadows were needing to be. And I think that really positions the model into the background quite nicely. And then the final part was I wanted to just increase especially the focus on Jessica, put the lightness of the image a bit, so I just popped the lightness just a little bit on there before finally adding my logo in the top corner. So that was the creation of the big red dress. There was never a dress, it was always a great big sheet of material and Jessica doing a brilliant posing, stood on a platform in the middle of a field where the raw image didn't look that inspiring, but I hope you agree the final image was well worth it. Well, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the explanation half as much as I enjoyed making this, and I hope you'll be inspired to push your own creativity, photography and digital art on even further. So many thanks for listening. Please let me have any comments or questions in the comments below. I'll get back to those as soon as possible. And please do subscribe to our Creative Photography YouTube channel and to our Facebook page so you don't miss any of our upcoming training, discussions and events. Thank you very much.